Okay, awesome. So we are recording. I've got you guys up and you can see my screen. Today, let's see if I can scoot this over. Minimize. Sorry, I'm trying to get to this tab that's behind these over here. It's lovely. No, don't do that. There we go. Just go here. Okay, guess we're going to do that. Wow. Okay, here is how we're laying out today's notes, 5th grade. So at the top, go ahead and write our heading, equivalent fractions. Yeah, I know. I mean, it's pretty funny that my computer doesn't want to do what I want it to do. Okay, equivalent fractions is our title for today's notes. And today's date is January 6th, 2021. And what you're going to do is about halfway down your page, put a line across it. So you're splitting your page into a top half and a bottom half, kind of like one big fraction, right? And then in that top half, you're going to split then the top half in half. So these are like 2/4 of a page. And then this word is or. Because this top part, we're going to be talking about equivalent fractions and how we can get equivalent fractions. And remember, equivalent fractions are two fractions that have a different numerator and denominator, but they equal the same fraction. And then on the bottom, we will be practicing simplifying fractions because equivalent fractions and simplifying fractions all go together. When you are done, you have your title at the top and today's date. You've split your page in half and then split the top half into half and put the word or in the middle. Why don't you go ahead and type done or ready to move on into the chat box. Then I will know we are all ready to start with the rest of our notes. Awesome. Thank you, guys. If we have time, you can see Benny again today. Yes, if we have time. All right, we're going to wait for a few more people. Michael, it's still Benny the bear. Yes, he still looks like a bear. He's not getting his hair cut until, I think, January 18th, because lots of people are having their dogs groomed, and we couldn't get him in until then. Okay. Take another minute or so, so that everyone has their page formatted. Yeah, Chanel, I saw that you thought Benny should get a line cut yesterday. We get him cut to where he still has some fluff on top of his head because that's part of his personality. Sydney, we bring him to, we have a place in Shakopee called Chuck and Don's, and they do haircuts. Oh, can you hear me now? Okay, good. We bring him to Chuck and Don's. That's where he gets his haircut. Okay, we are going to move on and start taking our notes. I'm going to slide this over. That's funny. Okay, I'm going to zoom us in a little bit. That should be good. Bring this back up so I can see the chat. And we are ready to rock and roll. Oh, actually, I need to unclick the magnifying glass. Now we're ready to rock and roll. Okay, so we're first going to start the top half. And what you're going to do, why don't you guys just start with this, with these two things. So at the top, in the top half, the left side, there are two ways we can find equivalent fractions. The first one is by multiplying. The second one is by dividing. So on the left side, you're going to write these notes for multiplying. And on the right side, you're going to write the notes for dividing. So we can multiply both the numerator, remember the numerator is on top, and the denominator, which is on the bottom, by the same number. And then on the other hand, you could also divide the numerator and the denominator by the same number as well. So for example, if we had 1/2, it'd be a 1 on top and a 2 on the bottom. I couldn't multiply the 1 by 2 and then multiply the 2 by 3. I would have to multiply both the 1, which is the numerator, and the 2, which is the denominator, by either multiply them both by 2 or multiply them both by 3. Whatever we do to the top, the numerator, we have to do to the bottom, the denominator. So you can multiply. Yes, some of you were doing this yesterday on Prodigy. That's awesome. Finding some equivalent fractions. So you can multiply both the numerator and the denominator by the same number, or you can divide both the numerator and the denominator by the same number. So you might be thinking, well, Missy, what does this look like? Well, I will show you. Scoot this down enough. Scoot this down just a little bit. Okay, so in each box, we have an example here. There we go. So on the left side, when we multiply, in this example, we have 1/3 as our fraction. If we want to find an equivalent fraction, remember, it's similar to an equivalent decimal where you can add as many zeros onto the end of that decimal number as you want. If you are Mackenzie, you might just add 50 zeros onto the end of that decimal. But no matter how many zeros you add onto the end, it's still the same number. They are all equivalent. With fractions, it's a little different because you're not just adding zeros. What you are doing is you're multiplying our numerator on top and denominator on the bottom by the same number. So with 1/3, if we multiply the 1, the numerator, by 4, we would do the same thing to the denominator, 3, as well. So if we multiply both the 1 and the 3 by 4, we get 4/12. In 5th grade, we can see that they're equivalent because when we represent the fractions as a pizza or a pie, you can see that even though the 4/12 is split into more pieces, it's taking up the same amount of our pizza or pie as the 1/3, isn't it? So you can see that they're both coloring in the same amount of our pizza or pie, even though here, am I unfrozen now? Okay, even though here with the 1/3, it's just one big piece, whereas in our second example, it's 4 smaller pieces, but they take up the same amount of space. Then on the flip side, let's say we have a large fraction with larger numbers, an 8 as the numerator and a 10 as the denominator. We could go ahead and multiply the 8 by something and the 10 by the same number and still get an equivalent fraction. But you can also get an equivalent fraction by doing the reverse multiplication, division. So again, if I am going to divide the numerator 8 by 2, I have to do the same exact thing to the denominator. Divide it by 2. So 8 divided by 2 is 4, so that's our new numerator. 10 divided by 2 is 5. And again, we can see that they are the same fraction, just different numbers, by looking at our two examples, or our two pictures, our two pizzas or pies. Even though our pie on the left is split into 8 pieces, it's still taking up the same amount of space as our pie over here that's split into 4 pieces. These are just 4 larger pieces versus 8 smaller pieces, but they take up the same amount of the pizza or the pie. So what I'd like you to do is in the comment box, and again, this, I believe you guys did this last year in 4th grade. In the comment box, I would like you to type how you're feeling about this so far. Does it make sense, to multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same number, or to divide the numerator and the denominator by the same number? Show me 1 through 5. How are you feeling about this, about remembering this skill? 1 through 5, how are we feeling? Okay. 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 Awesome. Eosius, thanks for using that equivalent decimal there in your number, or in your answer. Frankie, can you hear me now? Am I unfrozen now? Okay. Yep, so go ahead and type how you're feeling about this. Okay. Looks like a lot of people are feeling good. And again, if you're sitting there thinking, Miss E, am I unfrozen now? I think for some of you I'm freezing, and for some of you I'm not freezing. Frankie, if you can't hear me, look at your volume. You might have me turned down really low. Okay. All right. Okay, we are going to move on. So for equivalent fractions, multiplying and dividing by the same numbers. So that's the biggest thing, fifth grade. If you are going to be multiplying or dividing that numerator on top by a number, you have to do the same exact thing to the denominator. So what I want you to do before we move on to simplifying fractions, awesome, Frankie, I'm glad you can hear me. Before we move on to simplifying fractions, in a space in this top portion, it doesn't matter which side you go on, maybe the multiplying side, I want you to write down the fraction 1/2. Okay, mine's backwards, but that's a 1 and that's a 2. Write down 1/2, so 1/2. 1's your numerator, 2's your denominator. I know mine's flipped. And I want you to list as many equivalent fractions for 1/2 as you can. So for example, I wonder if I can flip my screen right now. Oh. How's that? Oh, now it works. Okay, so 1/2. So for example, and you can't use this example because I'm giving it to you. So for example, if I were to take 1/2 and multiply the top and the bottom by 2, I would just go 1 times 2 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. And 2/4 is an equivalent fraction to 1/2. So what I want you to do is in your notebook, don't put anything in the comments yet. Some of you are already starting to do that. First in your notebook, write down 1/2, and I want you to try and list as many equivalent fractions for 1/2 as you can. So remember, you would do that by multiplying the numerator and the denominator by the same number. So I did 1/2, and I did the 1 times the 2 and the 2 times the 2. You could do 1 times 3, 2 times 3. 1 times 10, 2 times 10. List as many equivalent fractions for 1/2 as you can in your notebook. I'm going to give you a little bit of time to do that. I'll just hold this up so you can see my example. So you should be listing as many equivalent fractions as you can for 1/2 in your notebook on one of these sides, the multiplier dividing side. So since we're multiplying, I'm probably would make sense to put in the multiplying side. But if you don't have space, that's okay. Elena, you can choose either on the multiplying side or the dividing side, wherever you have room. That's where you write the 1/2. And then next to that or around that, you will write equivalent fractions to 1/2. So my example was multiplying 1/2, both the numerator and the denominator, by 2, and I end up with 2/4. So 2/4 would be an equivalent fraction to 1/2. So you choose where you write it. All right. Richie, I'm going to say don't write it below because we're going to be taking notes below. Thank you. Okay, 5th grade. Once you have a bunch of equivalent fractions for 1/2, you can go ahead and type them in the chat box. Type some of those equivalent fractions into the chat box. All right, I see 2/4. Awesome. 5/10 works. 4/8. Now, Elena, 8/12 won't work. So you guys, for this one, you can check if your answer is right if your numerator is half of the denominator. So 8/12 is 8/2 of 12. No, but let's see if anyone typed it. I think I saw a 6/12. Yes, Mackenzie, 6/12. 6 is half of 12, so that works. It's half. Now, if you put 8/16, that works. I see 9/18, 5/10, 3/6, 7/14, 256 over 512, 10 over 20, 12 over 24. Zoe, you listed a bunch. They all look correct. Nice. Same with Eli. I see 100 over 200, 15 over 30, 20 over 40, 11 over 22, 200 over 400, 600 over 1200, 512 over 1024. So Jack Lonkey, think about, is 20 half of 30? Not quite. What would be half of 30 to put as your numerator? Yeah, it'd be 15 over 30. Nice job, Jack L. Awesome, you guys. Yep, Layla, that works, I believe. I think so. Nice. And then Mackenzie, 25 over 50. Nice job. And Emmy, I think you meant to put 300 over 600, not 3,000 over 600. Awesome. Okay, 5th grade, you can stop. So for this example, since it's 1/2, you can check to see if your answer is correct by making sure your numerator is half of your denominator. So 1 is half of 2, 2 is half of 4. Those all work. Nice job. So what we're going to do now is we are going to take the second part of our notes. So when you want to find two fractions that equal the same amount but have a different numerator and denominator, you either multiply both the numerator and the denominator by the same number, or you divide the numerator and the denominator by the same number. So for the second part of our notes, we are going to be practicing simplifying fractions, which, as an example, 5th grade, when we simplify, it would be like if you had 2/4 as a fraction and I asked you to simplify it. That means you are reducing the fraction down to its smallest form without changing the value. So you're making that numerator and denominator the smallest possible numbers they can be without changing the value of it. So that would be like me going from 2/4 down to 1/2. And I can't go any smaller than 1 over 2. So that's what we're going to practice. Emmy, if you don't have room, go on to the back of your page or on to the next page. Okay, so we are now going to simplify fractions. So go ahead and label the bottom part of your page, simplify fractions. And I put today's date again. It's up to you if you want to. All right, make sure your mutes are, or mics are muted. Make sure you have muted your mics. Awesome. Okay, so simplify fractions. This is the second part of our lesson. And so there are 2 steps. So the first step is we need to find the GCF. And that's the greatest common factor. And you might be thinking, well, Miss E, what do you mean by factor? Remember, a factor is a number that can go into another number equally. So if we have 10, factors of 10 would include 2, 5, 1, and 10. They all go into 10 equally. So when you are simplifying fractions, you are finding the greatest common factor, the largest number that can go into both the numerator and denominator. So if we're looking back at this example, like 2/4, the largest number that can go into both the 2 and the 4. Well, we know the numbers that can go into 2 are 1 and 2. The numbers that can go into 4 are 1, 2, and 4. So the largest number that can go into both of them is 2. So that would be their greatest common factor. So step 1 is to find the GCF, the greatest common factor of the numerator and denominator, the largest number that can go into both your numerator on top and your denominator on the bottom. So I have an example. Frankie, I'll get to your question here in just a moment. For the example, we have the fraction. Let me bring this all the way down. We have the fraction 24/36. So if we want to simplify this fraction all the way down to where it's the same value, but the numbers, the numerator and denominator, are as small as they can possibly get, what we would do is list all of the factors, remember numbers that can go into the numerator 24, and then we would list all of the factors or numbers that can go into the denominator 36. So if you're looking at what I have here, what I did is I put the numerator 24. Am I unfrozen now? Okay. I listed the numerator and the denominator, and then underneath I put 2 columns so that I could list on one side 1 factor and what I would multiply it by on the other side to get 24. So 1 times 24 gets me 24. So 1 and 24 are factors. 2 times 12 gets me 24. So 2 and 12 are factors. 3 times 8 gets me 24. So 3 and 8 are factors of 24. And then 4 times 6 gets me 24. So 4 and 6 are factors. Then I did the same thing for 36. So 1 and 36, 2 and 18, 3 and 12, 4 and 9, 6 and 6. So once you list out as many factors as you can for 24 and 36, or for your numerator and your denominator, that's when you start looking at the factors and you look for the largest number they both have in common, the largest factor they both have in common. So they both have 1, they both have 2, they both have 3, they both have 4, they both have 6, and it doesn't matter what side it's on. Just because the 6 is in the right column under 24 and the 6 is on the left column for 36, they still have 6 in common. So they're both factors. So they both have 6. 24 has 8 and 36 doesn't, so 8 isn't common. 24 has 24, 36 doesn't have 24. But do you see how they both have 12? Is there any number larger than 12 that they both have in common? No, 12 is the largest factor they both have in common. So for 24/36, the greatest common factor, the greatest factor they have in common, or the greatest number that goes into both our numerator and our denominator is 12. So we've completed step 1, finding the greatest common factor, 12. Now, once we find the greatest common factor, fifth grade, then our last and final step is to then divide the numerator and the denominator by the greatest common factor. So we would take the 24 and divide that by 12. Remember, whatever we do to the top, we have to do to the bottom. So we take 24 divided by 12 and 36 divided by 12 to get our simplest form, the smallest form for this fraction without changing its value. So if I were to do that, it would look like this. 24 over 36, divide the numerator by 12 and the denominator by 12, and you get 2 over 3, which is the simplest form. So now, fifth grade, could anyone type in the chat box for me? How do you know for a fact you are at the simplest form? Let's say maybe I didn't see that 12 was the largest number. Maybe I thought 6 was the largest number that 24 and 36 had in common. And I took 24 divided by 6 and 36 divided by 6. That would end up getting me 4 over 6. How would I know? Ooh, can you hear me now? Now you can hear me? Okay, let me say that again. How would I know for a fact that 2/3 is my simplest form? Is there anything you could kind of look out for to make sure you're in the simplest form? Let's say, for example, I didn't know that 12 was the largest number, and I accidentally divided by 6 instead of 12. Okay, I see someone commented, you know it's the simplest form when you can't go any lower or divide by anything. You are absolutely correct. So if I look at 2/3, is there any number that I can divide both 2 and 3 by that isn't 1? No, 1 is the only factor that the numerator and denominator now has in common, so I know I'm at my smallest form. If I were to accidentally think, okay, 6 is the greatest common factor, and I divide the 24 and the 36 by 6, that would get me 4 over 6. Now, if I'm looking at 4 over 6, and I can write this down too, if I were to accidentally choose a factor that isn't the greatest common factor, and I ended up with 4 over 6, well, I would look at 4 over 6 and say, hey, 2 can actually go into 4 and 6, so I'm not at the simplest form. So then I would go ahead and I would divide them both by 2. It's hard doing this upside down. Nope, that's a 6. 2. I divide them both by 2, and then that would get me, so 4 divided by 2 is 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. That would get me 2 over 3. So you know you're at the simplest form, the smallest possible form of that fraction when you look at the numerator and the denominator, and the only numbers that can go into it are 1. If there's another number that can go into both the numerator and the denominator, you aren't to the simplest form yet. Okay, Frankie, what is your question? Oops. Sorry, Zoe, I meant to send that to everyone. Frankie, go ahead and type your question. So, okay, we'll wait for Frankie's question first for him to type it. After I answer Frankie's question, I know you can see what I type. I had accidentally typed the go ahead and type your question though just to Zoe. I just realized that, so I retyped it for everyone to see. Okay, so Frankie, the greatest common factor, that's the largest number that can go into both your numerator and denominator. So when I listed these numbers over here for 24 and 36, I was looking for the largest factor, the largest number that 24 and 36 have in common that go into 24 and 36 evenly. So if we're looking at both of these, the largest number that can go into 24 and 36 evenly is 12. So they are the greatest common factor. They are the largest number that both that can go into both 24 and 36. So the greatest common factor, that is the largest number that can go into both your numerator on top and your denominator on the bottom. Does that make sense, Frankie? Okay. Okay, so 5th grade, what I want you to do now is type 1 through 5. How do you feel about simplifying fractions? How do you feel about this skill? 1 through 5, how do you feel? And again, I know a lot of you learned this in 4th grade. Remember, 5 means you feel confident enough to teach this to someone else. 1 means even with help, I still don't understand. 3 is I'm almost there. I would like an example in front of me to help though, or I need a little more practice with it. 4 is I'm confident. Maybe I can't teach someone this, but I know how to do it. And 2 is I need an example or a teacher next to me in order to write it. Okay. And again, 5th grade, we can go over this again next week as well. Okay. Okay, you guys, nice work. Is there anyone who has a question? Type in the chat box if you have a question. Does anyone have a question? Yes, Zoe, I would always be a 5 since I am teaching it to you. You're right. So Richie, your homework, I went into Prodigy again and I have selected some questions that go over some of the skills we've been learning. So you will have Prodigy, 20 minutes of Prodigy again for homework tonight. I'm glad you're excited about that. All right, is there anyone else who has a question? Frankie, you asked if you have any other Zooms. The only other Zoom, if you have questions this afternoon, let's say you're looking at Prodigy or Wonder or Grammar or something, there's an optional Zoom call where you can ask me questions, and that is from noon to 1. So that link is in there, but that's optional. You don't have to attend that Zoom call. Let's see. Okay, Chanel, you want to see the title of the first half? Here's the title of the first half. Zoe, I would say, Iosius, I would say for Prodigy, try not to do it until after our math Zoom call, because I usually go into Prodigy and align the questions to what we learned during our Zoom call. So the questions would line up a little bit more with what we just practiced. So I would say try not to do Prodigy until after our math Zoom call. Okay. Spanish, I believe yesterday was your only Spanish Zoom call. Yep, so you don't have it today. Addie says the Math Masters Zoom call is today at 3:30. So my Math Masters, make sure you are on that Zoom call at 3:30 this afternoon. Yeah, so Frankie, for PE, you don't have anything this week. Spanish, you only had the Zoom call yesterday. Oh, Mackenzie says you might have a Spanish Zoom call on Friday, probably because not a lot of people were joining it. I did email you guys that Zoom link yesterday. So what I would do is if you have a question about Spanish, email Mrs. or Senora Hidalgo. For wonder, what about vocabulary? Okay, Mackenzie, have a great rest of your day. And Eosius, I'm guessing the reason why you weren't let in is because you joined after the time it was supposed to start. So Senora Hidalgo was teaching and she didn't see that you joined, so she didn't let you in. That's why it's important for you guys to get into those Zoom calls a couple minutes early or right on time, because I know for me, if I wasn't able to have the chat box up, I wouldn't see you guys trying to join. So you have to make sure that you are on. Yep. So again, Elena, she was probably in the middle of teaching and wasn't able to look back at the box to let you in. So that's why you guys need to make sure you're on time. Oh, so Michael, it says in the directions for today on the post which words you need to do. So look back at today's post for your Wonder vocab words. Allison said that you guys have a Quizlet for homework in Spanish. So you're welcome, Michael. So fifth grade, go onto your Spanish Google Classroom page and look for that Quizlet so that you can do that for homework. Oh, it's bingo. So Richie says it's bingo, I think. I think that's what you're saying. Okay. It's sports. Oh, no, you're not. Okay.
I'm saying bingo because you got it right.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay, thanks, Richie. It's not bingo. You guys have a Quizlet. It looks like it's on sports. I think that's what you guys are saying. You guys know I don't know what you're doing in Spanish, so I'm just going off of the comments I'm reading. It's on sports. Okay, so it's a Spanish Quizlet about sports. Perfect. Okay, Zoe, email me if you're having trouble getting into Prodigy after our Zoom call. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen.